Welcome to another deep dive into the world of genes. We got some pretty interesting research sent to us, especially this paper. UniEntrezDB, large-scale gene ontology annotation dataset and evaluation benchmarks with unified Entrez gene identifiers.
It sounds pretty complicated.
Yeah, that's complex.
But it's tackling a big challenge in genetics research, right?
Yeah, you could say that. Geneticists these days, they're practically drowning in data.
I can imagine.
There's just so much information out there, but it's all over the place. Different databases,
Oh, I see.
and each one uses their own terminology and organization. It's a real nightmare for researchers trying to make sense of it all.
So that's where this UniEntrezDB comes in, trying to bring some order to the chaos.
Exactly. They're creating this universal system for organizing and accessing gene information.
Okay.
Their big thing is Entrez Gene IDs. It's basically like giving each gene its own unique barcode.
Ooh, a barcode.
Yeah, a universal identifier
I like
that links all the info about that gene. Makes sense.
No matter where it's stored.
So instead of digging through mountains of data, researchers can just, scan the barcode and get everything they need?
Pretty much. And to make it even easier, they use the system called Gene Ontology.
Gene Ontology.
Or GO for short.
Okay.
It tags genes with information about their function.
So it's kind of like a giant index for genes.
You got it.
I'm starting to see how this could be a game changer.
Oh, it definitely is.
But before we get into all the specifics of this UniEntrezDB,
Sure.
Can you just remind us why understanding gene function is so important in the first place? For people who maybe haven't thought about this in a while.
Of course. So genes, right, they're like the blueprints for life.
Mhm.
They've got the instructions to build everything in our bodies.
Yeah.
From the proteins that do all the essential tasks
Mhm.
to the cells that make up our tissues and organs.
So basically everything.
Pretty much. And understanding how genes work,
Mhm.
especially how they work together.
Right.
That's the key to understanding health, disease,
Yeah.
everything in between.
It's not just the individual genes then, right?
Right.
It's also about how they interact with each other, influence each other.
Exactly. It's like a complex network
Yeah.
with each gene playing its specific part.
And that's where this UniEntrezDB comes in.
Exactly. By standardizing those gene IDs and using those JUGO terms, researchers can compare and analyze gene function
Across
different species, different databases,
Oh, wow.
even different levels of biological organization.
So it's like creating this common language for the world of genes.
Yeah,
So researchers can actually understand each other.
exactly. And share their findings in a meaningful way.
That's pretty powerful.
It is. It opens up a whole new world for research.
Speaking of possibilities, I read they put this UniEntrezDB to the test with evaluation benchmarks.
Yes.
Sounds pretty intense. What did these benchmarks actually involve?
Well, they designed 4 of them to see how well UniEntrezDB could handle different gene-related tasks.
Like what kind of tasks?
Well, they wanted to see if it could predict things like which genes work together in the same biological pathway,
Yeah.
how genes interact with each other, even how to identify different types of cells based on their gene expression.
So it's not just about organizing all this data then. It's about actually using it to make predictions and answer important biological questions.
Exactly.
Sounds ambitious. I'm curious to hear how it performed. Did it live up to the hype?
Well, that's what we'll delve into next.
Okay.
The results are actually pretty fascinating,
Right.
and they have some pretty significant implications for the future of gene research.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Let's get into those results.
Let's do it. All right, so those benchmark results, remember they wanted to see, how UniEntrezDB stacked up against
Right.
the existing methods?
Mhm.
So they compared it to some big names,
Oh,
like Gene2Vec. That one analyzes, gene expression data.
and DMERT2,
Mhm.
which focuses on gene sequences.
So they really wanted to make sure this UniEntrezDB could hold its own
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
against the best of the best.
Exactly.
So what happened? What were the results?
Well, for those gene-level benchmarks, UniEntrezDB did pretty well.
Okay,
Specifically their GOAM model,
you go AM.
which only uses gene ontology information.
Okay.
It actually outperformed DNMERT2 in some tasks.
Interesting.
But what really stood out to me was how GNMERT performed when they combined it with GeneAdo.
So they combine the power of gene function information
From gene ontology.
with the insights from gene expression data.
Exactly.
And what happened then?
The results were amazing. This combined approach, it just blew the others out of the water.
Wow.
It was so much better than either model on its own. It really shows that integrating different types of gene information,
Okay.
in this case, function, any ending expression,
That can give you much more accurate predictions.
about gene behavior.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like having a more well-rounded understanding of a gene, right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
looking at it from multiple angles
Mhm.
to get a clearer picture
Right.
of its role and everything.
Exactly. And it's not just about understanding, individual genes. It's about seeing how they interact,
Yeah.
how they influence each other,
Yeah.
how they work together in those complex pathways.
To carry out those essential processes.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the other benchmarks,
Right.
right? How did UniEntrezDB do on those?
Well,
Especially the protein interaction one.
yes.
Because, proteins are the ones actually doing the work
Oh, yeah, for sure.
in the cell.
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
So the UniEntrezDB model,
Mhm.
again, just using that GOAEM,
Okay.
it achieved the highest performance
Ah.
in one of the protein interaction tests.
Wait, so a model based purely on gene function
Mhm.
outperformed models specifically designed to, like, predict protein interactions.
It did.
How is that even possible?
It just shows how important that information embedded within a gene is.
Okay.
Especially those functional annotations, it gives you incredibly valuable insights into how the protein's going to behave.
So even though proteins are the ones, carrying out the instruction,
Yeah.
knowing the backstory, you could say,
Mm-hmm.
the functional annotations of the gene
Right.
can be just as important.
Precisely. Now let's talk about the single-cell type annotation benchmark.
Okay.
This one uses a really powerful technique
Ooh.
called single-cell RNA sequencing.
Single-cell RNA sequencing.
Yeah, it's used to identify different cell types
Okay.
based on their gene expression profiles.
So it's like taking a snapshot of a cell's activity,
Yes.
seeing which genes are turned on and off
Right.
at a specific moment.
You got it. And, you guessed it, the combined GOAM and GENA2-VEC model came out on top again.
No surprise there.
Highest accuracy in identifying those distinct cellular fingerprints.
Okay, so strong performance across all 4 benchmarks.
Mm-hmm.
But what does this actually mean for me?
Right.
Someone who's not a scientist. Why should I care about a new gene database?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
Imagine a future where doctors can use your genetic information to predict your risk of developing certain diseases,
Wow.
tailor treatments to your specific genetic makeup,
Mm-hmm.
or even detect health problems before they even show up.
That would be incredible.
That's the promise of personalized medicine.
And this UniEntrezDB is helping to make that a reality.
Absolutely. By creating this unified system
Right.
for accessing and analyzing, huge amounts of genetic data,
Yeah.
UniEntrezDB is paving the way for those breakthroughs.
It's like giving researchers a powerful new tool
It is.
to unlock the secrets of the human genome.
Exactly. And the potential applications.
Yeah.
They're huge, from developing new drugs and therapies to just understanding the fundamental mechanisms of life.
I have to admit, when we started this deep dive, I thought genes were, like, incredibly complicated.
I know, right?
But now I'm starting to see, like, the elegance in their organization,
Mhm.
their interconnectedness,
Yes.
and the potential they hold
It's amazing.
for improving human health.
It is truly fascinating, and this research is really just the beginning.
I bet.
The more we learn about genes, and how they all relate to each other,
Yeah.
the closer we get to unlocking the full potential of personalized medicine
Right.
and understanding, the complexities of life itself.
This deep dive has been really enlightening.
I'm glad.
But I'm sure there's more to explore, right?
Oh, definitely.
Are there any other, like, key findings or points from the research
Mhm.
that we haven't touched on yet?
There are a few things I think are worth highlighting.
Def-
First, let's talk about the specifics of those benchmark results.
Yes. I want to know more about how those models actually performed
Okay.
on those gene-related tasks.
Yeah.
Give me the details. Yes. I want to know more about how those models actually performed
Okay.
on those gene-related tasks. Give me the details.
Okay, so remember that pathway co-present prediction challenge?
The one where it's like figuring out which genes work together?
Exactly. The UniEntrezDB model, the one using both GOAE and D gene expression data,
Okay.
it hit over 70% accuracy.
Wow.
It totally blew the baseline models, the ones just using, expression or sequence data, out of the water.
So it's like knowing more about a gene, not just its sequence, but like what it does, you get a better idea of how it'll team up with other genes.
Exactly.
It's like, you wouldn't just want someone's job title on a team, right? You want their skills and experience too.
A more complete picture
Yeah.
leads to better predictions.
Okay, what about,
Now, in the functional gene interaction prediction, UniEntrezDB did really well again, over 80% accuracy.
wow.
This shows it's really picking up on those subtle ways genes influence each other.
It's like mapping out the dynamics of a whole friend group.
Yeah.
Who's close to whom, who influences who.
Yeah.
Genes have their own social networks, I guess.
That's a great way to think about it. And these relationships are key to, how genes control all those cellular processes.
Right.
But the protein interaction benchmark, that's where it gets really fascinating.
Okay, why? What happened?
Even without any protein-specific data. GOAM alone
Just GOAM.
Yeah.
Wow.
reached over 88% accuracy on one of the tests.
Hold on. So a model based just on gene function
Mm-hmm.
outperformed those built for proteins directly. That's crazy.
It is surprising and
Yeah.
tells us that those functional annotations of a gene,
Mhm.
they're incredibly powerful for understanding the proteins it creates.
So even though proteins do the work, knowing the origin story, you could say, of their gene
Right.
is crucial.
Precisely. And lastly, that single-cell type annotation, using that single-cell RNA sequencing,
Okay.
that combo of GOAM and GENA-VEC,
Yeah.
it won, again, almost 79% accuracy in identifying cell types.
So consistent wins across the board. It really does seem like this whole UniEntrezDB approach,
Yeah.
bringing together all these different kinds of gene info, it's a big deal.
It is, although, the researchers did mention some challenges, too.
Oh, right.
Like, this isn't the final word.
Yeah, of course.
There's always more work to do, like integrating even more databases,
Mhm.
refining how gene names and IDs are linked. It's an ongoing process.
That's science, right?
Exactly.
Always pushing forward, always finding new questions.
Absolutely.
This makes me think, though, if this UniEntrezDB helps us understand how genes work together,
Mm-hmm.
could we use it to, like, design completely new W genes? Or even reprogram existing ones?
Now that is a thought-provoking question, and it's definitely one researchers are exploring. The potential is huge. Just imagine what we could do if we could really, precisely control gene activity.
That's incredible. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
and I feel like I have a much deeper appreciation for this whole world of genes.
I'm glad to hear that. It's been a pleasure diving into this research with you.
Likewise.
And to everyone listening, I encourage you to, keep exploring this fascinating field.
Yeah.
Genetics is constantly evolving. Who knows what incredible discoveries are just around the corner?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of genes. We hope you enjoyed exploring with us.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time.